said, this is from Kenya. It was beaded just like ours, same colors. The stone tablets of the yellow race of people are kept by the Tibetans in Tibet. And the guardians of the traditions of the people of Europe are the Swiss. In Switzerland, they still have the mask day when each family brings out its mask. They still know the colors of their families. They still know their symbols, some of them. I went to school with some people at the University of Washington from Switzerland, and they shared this with me. Each of these four keepers happen to be people that live in the mountains. If you went straight through the Hopi reservation to the other side of the world, you would come out in Tibet. The Tibetan word for sun is the Hopi word for moon, and the Hopi word for moon is the Tibetan word for sun, because they're on the opposite sides of the world. There was some people from the yellow race of people. In 1976, because the United States was celebrating 200 years of freedom, they're having this bicentennial. Some of the native people thought this was significant, and they carried a sacred pipe bundle from the west coast to the east coast of this land. And I particularly I was thinking last night as we were having the circle out here about this. They said that the roads of this land would either go north-south or they would go east-west. If they went north-south, we would come together as brothers and sisters. But if they went east-west, there would be destruction, and almost the earth itself would have a hard time. So you all know the roads went east-west. They said things then would be lost from the east to the west and the north to the south, but they would come back from the west to the east and come back from the north to the south. They would be lost from the south to the north. So 9 years ago, in 1976, from the west to the east coast of this land, from San Francisco to Washington, D.C., people carried a sacred pipe bundle by hand on foot across this land. My aunt had dreamt 15 years earlier, and that dream was in a book, that people would throw rocks and bottles at that pipe bundle as they carried it across the land. People that didn't like them. Sure enough, that came about. People threw, but as my aunt seen it in her dream, that it only come so far, and then they dropped, and nothing touched it. When they got up to the top of the Rockies, they hit a hard storm, and there was an elder man. He had long white hair. He says, I will carry it now. They had a van, and then they had people walking by the van carrying that bundle, and the old man got out of the van. He carried it clear through that storm. He was so cold when he got back in the van that somebody touched his hair and it fell. His hair was frozen. You have to be really cold for your hair to freeze, but that old man carried it through that storm, because they said if we carried this bundle across the earth, the powers would begin to come back. It was carried from west to east. They said a spiritual fire would be lit in the north, and it would come down the northwest coast of this land, and when it gets to Puget Sound, it will go inland. I think this 9 years later is the gathering in the north myself. That's why I came here. This is it. We have the capacity to start the spiritual fire now here. The old people long ago seen it and foretold it, and I'm going to come to that. So we went through the cycle of time. Each of the four races went to their directions, and they learned their teachings. It was in Newsweek magazine not too long ago that 8 out of 10 foods that people eat on the earth were developed here in the Western Hemisphere, because that was our guardianship, to learn the teachings of the earth and the things that grow from the earth. And we were given a sacred handshake to show when we came back together as brothers and sisters that we remembered the teachings. And it was indicated on the stone tablets that the Hopis have, that the first brothers and sisters that would come back to them would come as turtles across the land. They would be human beings, but they would come as turtles. So when the time came close, the Hopis built a special village to welcome the turtles that would come across the land, and they got up in the morning and looked out at sunrise, and they looked out across the desert and they saw the Spanish conquistadors coming covered in armor like turtles across the land. So this was them. So they went out to the Spanish man and they extended their hand, hoping for the handshake, but into the hand the Spanish man dropped a trinket. And so word spread throughout North America that there was going to be a hard time, that maybe some of the brothers and sisters had forgot the sacredness of all things, and all the human beings were going to suffer for this on their